In 2020, Meghan gave a keynote speech to the attendees of the Girl Up Leadership Summit. What do Meghan's arguments and persuasion techniques reveal about her agenda? And what does the speech say about the validity of celebrity speeches? Let's find out. Hang on, because things are about to get even more authentic and organic than usual. And if you liked the video, be sure to click the like button and subscribe for more empowering videos. Time to get the party started.
To young women around the world who aren't just poised to change the world, but who've already begun changing the world.
Meghan invites the audience to think of themselves as group members, defined by their gender and not their individuality. In speeches, this is the first step in creating a collective we and constituting an audience which might not even exist outside of the speaker's rhetoric.
To change the world, and changing the world.
Changing the world. That doesn't sound vague at all. Also, who says that every group member wants the same changes? What if your opinions go against the group's opinions? How loving and inclusive will the group be then? Groupthink-based rhetoric is exclusivity masked as inclusivity, and as the speech progresses, or regresses if you will, this point is made painfully obvious.
Last month I had a chance to speak to the 2020 class at my high school alma mater.
Yes, who can forget the politicizing graduation speech that no one asked for?
George Floyd's life mattered, and Breonna Taylor's life mattered, and Philando Castile's life mattered. And I remember my teacher at the time, one of my teachers, Miss Palia, said to me before I was leaving for a day of volunteering, always remember to put others' needs above your own fears. So the first thing I want to say to you is that I'm sorry. I am so sorry that you have to grow up in a world where this is still present.
What's implied here is that Meghan is brave because she's putting other people's needs above her fears, allegedly. So this self-praise is a way for Meghan to guide people's impression of her, as if that wasn't already clear from her emphasis on volunteer work.
Miss Palia said to me before I was leaving for a day of volunteering,
"I'm sorry" speaks volumes about Meghan's groupthink, as if she can apologize on behalf of one group she allegedly represents, even though no one asked her to another group. Thus, the apology speaks to Meghan's sense of self-importance.
And I said that they shouldn't see their graduation as an ending, but rather as a beginning. The beginning of a journey where they can now harness their work, their values, and the skills, all the skills that they've learned, to rebuild the world around them.
I'm sure people won't forget that either. Her advice was very specific and didn't sound contrived at all.
There's a way for us to reframe this for you and to not see this as the end of something, but instead to see this as the beginning of you harnessing all of the work, all the values, all the skills that you have embodied over the last 4 years, and now you channel that. Now all of that work gets activated. Now you get to be part of rebuilding. And I know sometimes people say, how many times do we need to rebuild? Well, you know what? We are going to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild until it is rebuilt.
Well, at least you got to say rebuild 6 times in 10 seconds, because that's how you change the world. You say rebuild and values without specifying what the rebuilding entails and what the values are. The students didn't see their graduation as an ending. A strange opinion to try to attribute to graduate students, by the way. But Meghan needs them to have this opinion in order to come across as the compassionate, uniting spokesperson. What work? Which values and skills? The speech is just as profound as the graduation speech.
Now, many of you have already spent years embodying and, yes, even enacting the change you'd like to see in the world.
This is the second ideological effect of constitutive rhetoric. The speaker trying to make it look like it's the same collective we across time and space, as if all people in this demographic want to see the same change. Thus, this effect has an oversimplifying function.
Yet the opportunity that lies ahead for you is the same one that those graduates and millions of young women around the world have as well.
When audience members recognize themselves in the speech and realize that they're being addressed by the speaker, it's called interpellation. The speaker ascribes a certain self-understanding to the audience members, making it easier to persuade them, and persuasion is what rhetoric is about.
I want to share something with you.
This is an intimidation tactic. making it look like the speaker's at eye level with ordinary people and is about to reveal something personal. This tactic imitates a conversation that people would have with their friends. So what is it? I can't wait to find out.
It's that those in the halls and corridors and places of power, all of those people, they depend on you more than you will ever depend on them.
That's quite a revelation, I must say. I wasn't prepared for that. It's ironic to hear Meghan say this when the tactics she uses in this speech and has used in other speeches are entirely dependent on the audience members' support. She's literally speaking from a position of power. She's one of the powerful people who depend on people to believe and support the groupthink-based rhetoric. So perhaps this passage actually reveals more about Meghan's motives and intentions than anything else.
And here's they know this. They know that all of you at a younger age than any modern comparison are setting the tone for an equitable humanity, not figuratively, literally.
It seems kind of obvious that it's literally. How could it be figuratively? Once again, it's a super important distinction. Meghan doesn't say equal, but equitable. Equality means that everyone is treated the same exact way, regardless of differences. Equity means that everyone is provided with what they need to succeed. This way, equity is tied to equality of outcome, which values a person's innate characteristics above their talent and merits. It's a way of marginalizing one group to favor another group, all in the name of speaking for marginalized groups, of course.
If every powerful woman in this room pledges to hire 3 women in jobs this year that women don't usually get, directors, cinematographers, VFX supervisors, composers, stunt coordinators, board members, all the jobs are jobs that women don't usually get.
I don't know why anyone wouldn't feel included by this rhetoric. I'm just wondering, at whose expense should these people be hired? Which group shouldn't be hired in order for another group to be hired? Don't get, she says, implying unfairness. Because of course, it's not like men and women choose different jobs, and that we've had equality of opportunity for decades.
Do you all pledge with me?
Pledges? Yes, that sounds very mature. So inclusion above all, unless you don't have the right physical characteristics. But still, that doesn't stop Meghan from taking it upon herself to speak on behalf of a united humanity, even though the implications of Meghan's rhetoric can't be any more divisive.
This is a humanity that desperately needs you. To push it, to push us forcefully in a more inclusive, more just, and more empathetic direction, and to not only frame the debate, but to be in charge of the debate.
To push us forcefully in a more inclusive, just, and empathetic direction. Yes, that totally sounds inclusive, just, and empathetic. The fact that she's just mentioned the word equitable, which points to the opposite of how many or most people define fairness, doesn't exactly make this better. There's nothing more inclusive and empathetic than wanting to be in charge of the debate. That sounds so loving and tolerant. And once again, I deeply appreciate the distinction.
And to not only frame the debate, but to be in charge of the debate.
What Meghan's doing here is that she monopolizes terms with positive connotations before they're used against her. That way, if you oppose what she's saying, you're against inclusion, fairness, and empathy. And similar disingenuous claims. Politicians use this tactic on a daily basis. This shows how unreliable an intentionally vague term like humanity is. Humanity consists of individuals, many individuals who don't agree with Meghan and like-minded people. So by inference, it can't be humanity in its entirety that wants this forceful push. Celebrities frequently monopolize terms and oversimplify issues when they have products or funds they want to sell.
The reason women in nearly every industry are not represented in powerful positions is because women are being discriminated against or retaliated against for hiring and for promotion. Many women are further oppressed by intersections with other marginalized identities, age, class, religion, physical ability, and are subject to multiple avenues of discrimination.
Oppressed, marginalized. Portman knows which popularized terms to use in order to play on the audience's emotions and keep feeding the profitable victim narrative. The irony is striking. She's standing on one of the world's largest podiums, metaphorically speaking, talking about oppression and marginalization, knowing that if anyone dared go against her narrative, they'd be thrown out of the room, and their careers would be in jeopardy to say the least.
At Time's Up, we want all people, men, women, and those who identify as neither and both, to lead the charge to make hiring more fair. So what can you do? First, money. You can give or you can raise money for the Legal Defense Fund.
Portman's net worth is over $100 million, so the reason why she laughs is either because she's embarrassed to say what she really wants from people, or because she knows that she has to act embarrassed. No matter how much she laughs though, she's still asking for people's money. What's her self-interest in giving a speech with nothing but appeals to people's anger, indignation and pity? Could it be the fund she's advertising for? Just a guess. Like Meghan, Portman's in a position of power, which is kind of strange, considering the patriarchal structures she's allegedly trying to topple.
And to not only frame the debate, but to be in charge of the debate. On racial justice, on gender, climate change, mental health and well-being, on civic engagement, on public service, on so much more. That's the work that you are already out there doing.
That's the work Meghan implicitly demands that they do, more like it. Presuppositions just sound a lot nicer and make Meghan's narrative sound like it's already a success story. I like the collective you, as if everybody believes and wants the same. It sure doesn't sound like there's much room for people who go against this inclusive group. Ironically enough, Meghan continues mentioning the opinions you must share.
Girl Up members are organizing Black Lives Matter protests around the world. You're creating films. You're creating films to encourage your peers to become activist leaders. You are also demanding to own the conversation.
Activist leaders? Yes, because that doesn't sound like an irresponsible suggestion when it's put in the context of owning the conversation, which I must say is one of the most inclusive and empathetic phrases I've ever heard. Meghan sure wasn't lying when she monopolized the terms inclusion and empathy. The word conversation is ironic. A conversation implies that two people or more are exchanging ideas. It doesn't mean that one of the speakers own it. That's authoritarianism. I wonder, what do activist leaders look like in one of the other areas Meghan mentioned?
Climate change.
Maybe something like this.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Again, what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want?
Another thing about those lawmakers and leaders and executives I mentioned earlier. They don't listen until they have to. But it will pull tightest right before snapping.
Is this an empowering speech or a horror story? Of course, Meghan's also part of this powerful crowd, but anything to create an us and them discourse, to make it look like she's at eye level with ordinary people. The collective we she's trying to constitute. Constitutive rhetoric needs an antagonist, otherwise the third ideological effect wouldn't work, since there'd be no reason to call to action. Meghan obviously knows that in order to create a community, she has to invent an antagonist, kind of like another empowering speaker whose only focus is people's physical characteristics and how they identify, not talent.
Be embarrassed if everyone in your workplace looks like you. If a man says to you that a woman is crazy or difficult, ask him, what bad thing did you do to her?
And judging by the applause, it totally sounds like Portman surrounded herself with different types of people. While it might be rare that a person is crazy, it's not rare that a person is difficult, irrespective of gender. This is Portman's disingenuous way of trying to evade responsibility for what she and like-minded people say and do. If you label them in a negative way, you've done something wrong. Rhetoric doesn't get any more disingenuous than this. Next, it's time for the classic playing on people's indignation tactic, a manipulative appeal to people's emotions.
Women have always historically gotten a lot of, well, that isn't how it's done, or yeah, that's an idea, but you know what, we're going to do this instead. But when do we hear that as women? We hear that in the moments that we challenge the norms.
But what about the many individuals who don't want to challenge the norms, as Meghan oversimplifies people's different lives and opinions as? Shouldn't they also own the conversation? This goes to show how groupthink-based rhetoric doesn't leave room for the individual. In the real world, people's ideas are judged on an individual basis. Sometimes a person's ideas are good, and sometimes they're bad, no matter what the person's gender is. And Meghan doesn't even attempt to prove a causal relation between rejected ideas and gender. Thus, her argument falls flat, and not even the word historically can make it sound profound. Meghan's already implied that gender is an issue that everybody in the demographic she's addressing apparently agrees on, even though they don't.
On gender.
So the question is, what are the norms about gender that Meghan wants her allies to change? How does Meghan even define gender? How does she even begin to define what a man or a woman is without upsetting the inclusive crowd she's speaking to or pretending to speak to?
So if that's the case, I say to you, keep challenging, keep pushing, make them a little uncomfortable, because it's only in that discomfort that we actually create the conditions to move towards real representation and meaningful influence over the structures of decision-making and power.
Challenging for the sake of challenging. Yes, because that'll definitely result in a meaningful influence over the structures of decision-making and power. She monopolized the word meaningful before people had the chance to ask themselves what the meaning of this pretentious formulation is. Anything to keep emphasizing the contrived us and them discourse.
To move towards real representation.
Meghan makes this move sound organic, to use one of my favorite platitudes, even though her word choice points in the opposite direction, authoritarianism.
To push us forcefully, and to not only frame the debate, but to be in charge of the debate, demanding to own the conversation and meaningful influence over the structures of decision-making and power.
With this, Meghan makes herself a spokesperson for lazy people who regurgitate this pretend equitable ideology to avoid holding themselves accountable for their decisions in life. Fake victim narratives that become a way for certain people to complain their way to privilege. Rather than uniting people, this kind of rhetoric, this kind of contrived newspeak comes across as divisive. In general, people like to feel acknowledged for their talent, not for their innate characteristics. Thus, to intelligent people, groupthink-based rhetoric will feel condescending, not empowering. Thank you for tuning in. See you in the next video.